they pulled out this police baton. And they was like, this is a weapon. And I said, I had no idea. Police never use that. They always pull out the gun first. So, is it a weapon? You tell me. Yes. Take a look at the coat. I know you're watching the coat real quick, okay? It looks very Real Housewife, right? Like I'm about to run some errands. I definitely look like I'm going somewhere with somebody else's money, right? Okay, cool. So this year, very humbling for everybody. Just a lot of things that happened that you're like, damn, I thought I was rich and famous. Nope, I'm just broke like everybody else. A lot of things that I have to complain about. I feel like people don't talk about Facebook enough, how toxic it is. Like out of all the apps, I feel like Facebook is the Staten Island of apps. Like it could be nice, but everybody just goes there to dump their trash. Like on Instagram, you have no idea that your crush is voting for Trump. But on Facebook, oh, she's letting everybody know her political views. The worst people are using Facebook frequently. Like I was checking Facebook because I was spiraling, and this girl wrote, she wrote, hands down, this is the best year of my life. And she was not being sarcastic, because she was hot. She was dead ass serious. This is the best year of my life. Pictures of her on a boat. There's flowers. Everybody's on a boat. Nobody's wearing a mask. So obviously they voted for Trump. And she felt the need to tell everybody that she was having a great year. I said, so many people died. Everybody's unemployed, lost their mind. But you needed to tell us that you're having a great year. Murder her. She needs to die. Bitch, how dare you? I lost everything. My wig is hanging on by a thread, and you want to tell me that you're having the best year of your life? Terrible place. But then I kind of like wanted to relate to her, right? Because I was like, the year's not that bad for me. Because like I won 2 cats in a lesbian breakup, right? Thank you. See, the problem with straight relationships, everybody's losing shit. You'll lose the apartment, lose some money, lose your ass, like just everything is gone. But gay people, we win, you know? Like I won the cats and she won her credit card back. Like that is the definition of love wins, right? I didn't pay off that credit card bill, but she got the credit card back. The physical card is in her name, bitch.
I thought that when I started comedy, I lost my soul, but no, this is what losing your soul is, not being able to do what you are supposed to do. I was like, you know what? Let me get into this TikTok. And then I was like, no, you are too old, sit your ass down. And so I started doing like an Instagram live show, which is pretty much TikTok for the elders. And people can see you spiral live, so people love that. And Instagram live, you just see the comments, which is, it's like YouTube. You're like, oh, so the people who hate me, I can see it live. It's a feed of just like, no, that's bad. I mean, in a way, comics love rejection because that's what gets them up more. Like whenever we have a good set, we're like, okay, I feel like I'm good, but if you have a good set then a bad set, you're like, I gotta have one more set tonight to cleanse my palate, to make me feel like, okay, we're doing well. So I do think we like the rush and the uncertainty. This is, you know, I love being on edge. That's why I'm very appreciative of anxiety, because it literally feels like everything is in my throat. So, you know, what's the worst that can happen? You guys just catch me not being funny? Not possible.
Yeah, I'm not doing terrible this year. Like, it humbled everybody, but like as a comedian, we're always humbled. Like we go to auditions that we like, oh, I'm about to book this. I got this. And then they're like, we're going in another direction, right? Or you go somewhere to like shoot a TV show that's a pilot and you're like, oh my God, I'm about to get a savings account, right? I'm about to really do it up. And that happened to me. Like I went, like 2 years ago, I went to LA to shoot this TV show pilot, and like they put me in first class. Well, it was just the front of the plane, but like, you know, Spirit, that is first class on Spirit. And I was like, excuse me, my seat. I got there 3 hours early to get that seat. But before I even get on the plane, right, I go through TSA, and TSA always gives me some problems because I always have like a jar of lotion. And they hate the jars of lotion. They're like, why do you need this much moisture? I was like, to cover my neck, miss, to cover my neck. I don't need Hollywood to know how old I am, okay? So they stopped me, they stopped my purse, and that's not a big deal for me. They always stopping me, they always hating on me. But originally, there was a white person that was scanning my thing, so I was very, very nervous. But then I saw a black woman, I was like, sis, we good. And then she was actually like, sis, we are not good. When they stopped my purse, a whole bunch of police came by my purse. And they were like, is this yours? I was like, maybe. What we talking about? So, but besides pulling out my jar of Pond's, they pulled out this police baton. And they was like, this is a weapon. And I said, I had no idea. Police never use that. They always pull out the gun first. So, is it a weapon? You tell me. They were like, what are you doing? I was like, that is a gift. So that's not really mine. That was a gift. And they will throw you in jail if it's a gift. I will let you know. They law and ordered me right at the TSA. Like, people from Wisconsin had their phones out. It was like World Star. I mean, it was real messy. And like, I had on an obnoxious coat. I had on my track pants, right? So everybody thought that I was selling drugs. Like, they thought I was a mule. And that wasn't the case. I had a police baton. And then my friend who was also shooting the pilot saw me, and I was in handcuffs. They law and ordered me right in front of her. And I was like, tell him I'm not gonna make it. You're gonna have to go without me. And she's like, sis, I'm already on the plane. Call your lawyer. So, I kept telling the people at TSA, I was like, I'm going to LA to shoot a pilot for this network that rhymes with B, right? I kept telling everybody, I was like, I'm gonna be on B. I'm gonna be on B. Not BET, but B. I was gonna be on B. They were like, call the bus, call the bus. Like you see on the shows, like, call the bus. They called this big ass van. They threw me in there, right? And they took me to airport jail, which is worse than regular jail because they don't have no Biscoff, right? So you ain't got no snack, no peanuts, no nothing. Just dry ass airport jail. So I'm in there and with my obnoxious coat and everything, and they take everything off of you. They take the shoelaces off because they don't want you to like strangle yourself. And I was wearing braids at the time, so they asked me if my braids were detachable, which is racist. Like, I was like, whoa, that is aggressive, like, and homophobic. How dare you ask a black woman if she could take her hair off? Because I could, but they don't need to know that. And also, I was like, this grade of hair is not strong enough for me to strangle myself, so this was on sale, thank you. So I'm in airport jail. I'm in the cell. I was like, yo, I was in there for 2 seconds. I was like, kill me now. And I had to use the bathroom too. So I'm acting like a white woman just drinking rosé with ice. And I was like, excuse me, I have to use the bathroom. They were like, the bathroom is in there. I was like, oh, that's for real criminals. Orange is the new black. This is just black is the black, right? Like, I'm not using that. So I did shit in that toilet because I had to use the bathroom. I took a number 4, and the girls loved it. They loved it. And they took my fingerprints and everything, and they were like, well, you know, it won't be bad if you don't have any, like, priors or whatever. And I hadn't filed my taxes in 12 years, so I was like, is that priors? Am I the Wesley Snipes of comedy? Will I have to go to Thailand after this and get cornrows? Just so I don't dodge jail. So they taking my fingerprint, and the guy is looking at me, and you know, I look cute, and he like black women, and he was just looking at me, and he was like, you know what do you do? And this was a real time for me to be honest. I was like, well, I'm a comedian. I'm crying and everything. And he's like, well, do you know Chris DiStefano? And I was like, will that get me out of jail? He said, I used to play ball with him. I was like, I'm sure it was bad. Y'all both look like y'all can't play ball because you're not black. So, Chris, I love you. Long story short, right? If you really liked this set and you thought it was amazing, you could catch me on B, not because they didn't pick up the pilot. Yes, yes, hilarious. I know, so funny, bitch. You're so welcome. All right, thank you.